Hello, this is the lesson for Thursday, long division of polynomials. So our opening activity here is a review from Tuesday of using Pascal's triangle. So we notice that it is a fourth degree, so we need to find what line corresponds with fourth degree using Pascal's triangle, and that is right here. So I'm first going to go ahead and just fill in my coefficients. Now, notice that it is subtraction, so our signs are going to alternate. So we have 1, and then that, since that one was positive, my next is going to be negative, and then plus 6, minus 4, plus 1. Now, remember that this is our A, this is our B, so I have 2x. And then we start with a to the fourth, b to the 0, since it is a fourth degree. So we need those powers to add to be 4. 4 plus 0 gives us that 4. And then our a decreases, our a power decreases each term. So now we have 2x to the third and then 3 to the first, because we need those powers to add to be 4. Again, a power decreases, and it needs to add to be 4. 2x to the first, which means our 3 to the third, and then finally we have 2x to the 0, 3 to the fourth. Now we can go ahead and simplify. 2x to the fourth is 2 to the fourth, which is 16, and then x to the fourth. 3 to the 0 is just 1. Minus 4 times 2 to the third, which is 8, and then x to the third, and then 3 to the first is just 3, plus 6 times 2 to the second is 4, x to the second, 3 to the second is 9, minus 4 times 2 to the first is 2, x to the first is just x, and 3 to the third is 27. Plus 1 times 2 to the 0, which is just 1, and 3 to the fourth, which is 81. I'm going to go through and again simplify this even more. 16x to the fourth minus, here I have 4 times 8 times 3 gives me 96. Right? 4 times 8 is 32 times 3 gives me the 96, x cubed, plus 6 times 4 is 24. Then we multiply that by 9 to get 216 x squared. Minus 4 times 2 is 8 times 27 gives us again 216 x. Don't forget your x. And then 1 times 81 is just 81. So this is our final answer for x using Pascal's triangle to expand. All right, this is also a review. I'm just going to switch colors so we can follow along more easily. First step, we notice this is subtraction. We go ahead and distribute that subtraction sign. That is going to that -1. And I'm going to rewrite. If you don't need to do this step, that's fine. Just be careful with your signs. I think it's easier to rewrite once we change those signs. +1. And then just combine like terms. I have 3x squared minus 2x squared gives me x squared. Here I'm going to look at 5x and 3x. 5x minus 3x gives me positive 2x. 8x plus 1 gives me plus 9. X squared plus 2x plus 9. There we go. And finally, sketch the graph of f of x equals negative x minus 3, x plus 1, x squared. So again, this step maybe isn't necessary for you, but I'm going to show it just so we can all follow along. We have f of x. I'm going to rewrite, so we have that negative, and x minus 3 cubed is x minus 3 times x minus 3 times x minus 3. Then we have x plus 1. That's just 1, so that stays the same. And here we have x squared, which is x times x. Okay? Now we need to set this equal to 0, which is all of these individual terms set equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Again, maybe this step isn't completely necessary for you. That's fine. But just make sure you know how to do it if you decide to skip this step. So now we have x equals 3, x equals 3, x equals 3, 3 times, notice, right, because that was a cubed function. Here we have x equals negative 1, and then x equals 0, x equals 0. So if I need to sketch this graph, I have stuff happening at negative 1, 0, and then 3. Okay, so I'm going to start just at negative 1. I have 1, 0, so we know that's going to be just straight through. I'm sorry. First, let's look at our degree, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 answers, right? So it's going to be a 6th degree because we have 6 zeros, right? 6 degrees even, and then we look at our leading coefficient. Here it was negative, right? So since it's even and negative, it's going to end going down. Okay, back to our zeros. At negative 1, we just have 1 0, it's going straight through. At 0, we have 2, that repeated 0, so that's going to be that parabola looking thing. And then at 3, we have 3 points, that's an inflection point. So that just looks like that. Now we can go ahead and connect our dots here. Goes through our repeated 0 at 0. And then our inflection point at 3. Now it's kind of ugly, but it looks something like that. But now that's enough to analyze our end behavior. So as x goes to negative infinity, as x goes to the left, our graph, f of x, is going to negative infinity. As x goes to positive infinity, our graph is headed towards negative infinity. So the new information for today's lesson is going to be dividing polynomials using long division. So first, let's do a review of just regular long division using numbers. It's probably been a while since you've seen this or have maybe forgotten completely. So first, I'm just going to go over a little vocab. This is called your divisor. This is called your dividend. Okay? So we need to see how many times 4 goes into 17,543. So we first start with, does 4 go into 1? No, right? So then we move over, does 4 go into 17? Yes, it does. How many times? 4 times, right? 4 times 4 is 16. So we write 16 there, and we subtract. 17 minus 16 is 1. Now we bring down our 5. How many times does 4 go into 15? 3 times, so I write that above my 5, okay? So we're working with this place, so it needs to be written above that 5. Okay, 4 times 3 is 12. Again, I subtract. 15 minus 12 gives me 3, and I move on and bring down that 4. How many times does 4 go into 34? 8 times, right? 8 times 4 is 32. I subtract. 34 minus 32 is 2. I bring down my 3. How many times does 4 go into 23? Well, 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. I subtract. I get 3. Now I have nothing left to bring down, and 4 does not go into 3. So 3 is my remainder. So you may remember writing it like this. another way to write our remainder, we take 4,385, and our remainder is put over our divisor. So, and 3/4, and we all know 3/4 is 0.75, so we can rewrite this as 4,385.75, and that is our final answer. Okay, I'll get you started on this one. So 256 is our dividend, so that goes on the inside, divided by 20. Now I want you to pause the video and try and do this on your own. Okay, so 20 does not go into 2, so we move over to 5. 20 goes into 25 how many times? Just once. 1 times 20 gives me 20. I subtract, I have 5. I bring down my 6. How many times does 20 go into 56? Twice. 2 times 20 is 40. I subtract, I get 16. Now, 20 does not go into 16, and we have nothing left to bring down, so that's where 16 turns into our remainder. So again, we can write 16 over 20, so our answer is 12 and 16/20. That reduces, right, divide both by 4 to 12 and 4/5, which can be rewritten as 12.8. Either way, 12 and 4/5 or 12.8 is acceptable. Okay, so now we're going to move into the long division of polynomials. This is the same concept as using long division with numbers. So our first number here is our dividend, so that's going to go under the divisor sign. So we have n cubed plus 8n plus 11n minus 12, and that's divided by n plus 3. Okay, so when we're dividing polynomials, we're going to primarily be looking at our first term here, n. So we need to see how many times does n go into n cubed? 3 times, right? 2 times. So let me rephrase that. What can we multiply n by to get n cubed? N times what gives me n cubed? N squared. So, I didn't write that correctly. N times n squared gives me n cubed. Since we're multiplying by n squared, that needs to go above our n squared term. So we're going to write n squared here, because n squared times n gives me n cubed. So n squared times n gives me n cubed. Now we also need to multiply that by 3. So plus 3n squared. Now, similarly, as if we were dividing by numbers, we need to subtract that. But be careful to subtract everything. So n cubed minus n cubed gives me 0. And then 8n squared minus 3n squared gives me 5n squared. Okay, so now I need to bring down my 11. And I get plus 11n. Now I'm looking at n times what gives me 5n squared? Well, I need my coefficient to be 5, so I know I'm going to multiply by 5. And n times n gives me n squared. So that's why we're writing above that n term, n to the first term, because 5n times n gives me 5n squared. Now go back and do it, multiply by the 3. So 5n times 3 gives me 15n. Right, now I subtract that. And I get 5n squared minus 5n squared is just 0. And 11 minus 15 gives me negative 4n. Again, I bring down my 12. Careful, that's minus 12. N times what gives me negative 4n. So notice my sign here is negative, so it's going to be subtract. And n times negative 4 gives me negative 4n. So negative 4 times n, negative 4n. Negative 4 times 3 gives me negative 12. I need to subtract. So notice this negative is going to distribute. We have negative 4n, subtract negative 4, 0. Negative 12n, subtract negative 12, so plus 12 gives me 0. So my remainder here is 0. We have nothing more to bring down, so this is where we stop. My answer is n squared plus 5n minus 4. Okay, pause the video and go ahead and try this second one on your own. This is our dividend. So we have 8x here. All right, 8x cubed minus 17x squared minus 15x plus 14 divided by x minus 2. How can we get 8x cubed from x? So what do we need to multiply x by to get 8x cubed? Well, to get the x cubed, we need to multiply by x squared. So we know it's going to go over our x squared term. And then do we need a coefficient? Yes, we need to get to 8. And our coefficient here is 1. So 8 times 1 is going to give me 8. So 8x squared times x gives me 8x cubed. And then we have 8x squared times negative 2 is going to give me negative 16x squared. Again, we're subtracting that entire thing. So we have 8x cubed minus 8x cubed gives me 0. And then that negative distributes, remember. So here we have negative x squared. Bring down our 15x. Notice that was subtraction. So what do we need to multiply x by to get negative x squared? Well, it's going to be negative. And then what's going to give me x squared? Multiplying by x. And I need my coefficient to be negative 1. Here it is negative 1, so that's all good to go. Negative x times x gives me negative x squared. Negative x times negative 2 gives me plus 2x. Subtract. Here we get negative x squared plus x squared. Remember that negative distributes through, gives me 0. Here I have negative 15x minus 2x gives me negative 17x. Bring down my 14. How can I get negative 17x from x? So what do I need to multiply x by to get negative 17x? Well, it's going to be negative. And I already have x, so we're good there. And then my coefficient here is 1. So I need to multiply by negative 17. Negative 17. Or I'm sorry, this should be 7. Where did I get 17? Oh, I wrote this wrong. I'm sorry. So that's a good lesson. Make sure we're copying everything down correctly. This should be negative 5. Okay, that's going to give me negative 7. So notice my error was right here. I wrote negative 15 instead of negative 5. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so here, negative 5x minus negative 2x gives me negative 7x. I bring down my 14. How can I get negative 7x from x? I need to multiply by negative 7. Negative 7 times x gives me negative 7x. Negative 7 times negative 2 gives me plus 14. Remember, I subtract that whole thing, so I have negative 7x plus 7x gives me 0. 14x minus 14x, we distribute that negative, it gives me 0. A remainder of 0, nothing more to bring down, so we know we're good to stop. Our answer is 8x squared minus x minus 7. Go ahead and circle that. Okay, again, If you feel good about this, go ahead and pause the video and do this on your own. Now, obviously by the title of the slide, we're going to have a remainder, so I'm going to show you what to do with that. So you should know how to set this up. K cubed plus k squared minus 82k minus 80 divided by k minus 9. Okay, k times what gives me k squared? Or excuse me, k cubed. I need to multiply by k squared, right? K squared times k gives me k cubed. K squared times negative 9 gives me negative 9k squared. Subtract, we get 0. Negative times a negative gives me a positive, so I have plus 10k squared. Bring down my 82, negative 82k. How do I get 10k squared? I need to multiply by 10k. 10k times k gives me 10k squared. 10k times negative 9 gives me negative 90k. Subtract, I get 0 here that I'm adding, so that gives me plus 8k, right? Positive 8, because I have positive 90 and negative 82. 8k. I bring down my 80. How can I get 8k? I need to multiply by 8, right? Plus 8. 8 times k gives me 8k. 8 times negative 9 gives me negative 63. Subtract, I get 0. I have negative 80 plus 63 gives me plus 17. Now I have nothing left to bring down, right? So I know I need to stop because k doesn't go into 17. So here I have k squared plus 10k plus 8 with the remainder. Remember, we do the same thing as we did if we look back at when we divided here, we took our 3 and we put it over our divisor of 4. So we're going to do the same thing with polynomials. We take 17 and it's positive, so we can go plus 17 over k minus 9. And that's our remainder. So there's our answer. Okay, setting up this is going to it's a little bit different. So in all of the ones we've done so far, we have had 3, 2, 1, 0, right? All of the terms have been there. Here we notice we go from 4 to 3 to 1, so we're missing that x squared term. So we need to put in a placeholder for that. So we're going to go 2x to the 4th plus 3x to the 3rd. Now here there should be an x squared term. So we're going to go ahead and write plus 0x squared because we need that placeholder there. Plus 5x, and then again plus 0. Divided by x squared plus 3x plus 2. How do we get 2x to the 4th from x squared? So again, we're looking at that very first term. We need to multiply by x to the second, right? Because x to the second times x to the second is going to give us x to the 4th. So that, be careful here, that's going to go over our x squared term. And then we need 2x to the 4th, so that's going to be 2x squared. So go ahead and multiply everything by 2x squared. So 2x squared times x squared gives me 2x to the 4th. 2x squared times 3x gives me plus 6x cubed. 2x squared times 2 gives me plus 4x squared. Go ahead and subtract. That's a 0. 3x cubed minus, oh, that should be not. Minus, did I do something wrong? Nope, we're good. Okay, 2x squared minus 6x cubed gives me negative 3x cubed. 2x squared times 2 gives me plus, oh, I already did that. What am I doing here? I'm sorry, 0x squared. So 0 minus 4x squared gives me negative 4x squared. I'm sorry. Perfect. Now, just like before, I'm bringing down my plus 5x. Okay, now I'm looking at, I have negative 3x cubed. How do I get 3x cubed? I need to multiply by, we know it's going to be negative. And to get x cubed, I need to multiply by x. And what's my coefficient? I need it to be 3. So now I multiply everything by negative 3x. Remember that's subtraction. So I have negative 3x times x squared gives me negative 3x cubed. Negative 3x times 3x gives me negative 9x squared. Negative 3x times 2 gives me negative 6x. Subtracting everything, this is 0, right? Because I distribute my negative. This is negative 4x squared plus 9x squared gives me plus 5x squared. I have 5x plus 6x gives me plus 11x. And I bring down my 0, so plus 0. Now I need to get 5x squared. So how do I get 5x squared? What do I need to multiply by? Just simply 5, right? We already have x squared. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply everything by 5 to get 5x squared plus 15x plus 10. Now I subtract, that's 0. 11x minus 15x gives me negative 4x. And 0 minus 10 gives me negative 10. All right, so here my leading coefficient is 2x, x to the squared, x to the second, x squared, and we're left with negative 4x, and we can't do anything there, so this is our remainder. Once we see that we're left with our degree here is less than what our divisor degree is, then we know we have to stop. So our answer here, we have 2x squared minus 3x plus 5, and then this is our remainder. Remember, we put our remainder over our divisor here. So this is a negative. So I'm going to factor that out. I could do this two ways. I can factor out my negative, and then I would have 4x plus 10 over x squared plus 3x plus 2. Or I can keep this positive, and then these are going to be negative. Either way works. And there's our answer. That's all for today's lesson. So you should now complete the 4.3 worksheet and the 4.3 formative. And as always, please reach out with any questions you may have.